Well, UN ODC is the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. It's the UN agency which is in charge of the UN Convention Against Corruption, UNCAC, that I'm sure you have heard about. So that convention, we serve as the secretary of this convention. Our headquarters is in Vienna, and we also serve as the secretary of the implementation review mechanism of this UN Convention Against Corruption. So all countries that join this convention, they have to be reviewed. Their implementation of the convention has to be reviewed, and we serve as the secretariat for this review, which is a peer review system. Malaysia went through it last year, and the report was released actually also publicly by the governments in February this year. And so we basically serve as the secretariat for that. Apart from that, we also are present in Bangkok and a number of other countries in the region. Bangkok is the regional hub for the UN in East Asia or Southeast Asia. So we are present there, and we through there we have a regional program that works with governments in the region on 4 areas. One is to help countries improve their legal and policy frameworks to deal with corruption. That's one area. So we work with countries to reform their laws and policies or develop anti-corruption strategies. The second one is we work with anti-corruption agencies to improve their capacities in dealing with corruption. The third area is supporting regional networks and regional fora for dealing with corruption, like CPAC. And the fourth one is working with civil society and private sector to engage them in the fight against corruption. So in all of these, under these 4 areas, we actually have had some engagements with MACC or with MACA, with the Anti-Corruption Academy, Malaysian Anti-Corruption Academy, or with the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission. As I mentioned earlier, Malaysia went through the review last year. There were many good practices which were identified. There were also some areas of improvement which were identified. So when necessary, if asked, we would work with the government to provide input into some of the reforms. We also, given some of the good experiences here, we also engage in using some of the capacities here in exchanges with other countries. So we hope that we can do more of that. But also, we have been involved with a number of regional activities in Malaysia, including CPAC itself.
Perhaps, how does this knowledge transfer and sharing of best practices among these countries would help curb or combat corruption?
Well, yes, corruption is a challenge that every country in the world faces, right? All countries around the world have it to a degree or another. So, obviously countries have been trying to find solutions, mechanisms, policies to curb corruption. And they have different experiences that they have obtained in doing this. Some countries have a longer experience, some countries have it's more recent kind of times they have started focusing on this. Nonetheless, I think there is a diversity of experiences across the globe. Plus, there are sometimes new issues that come up. So that needs new responses or new techniques or dealing with this. And we are working, we live in a dynamic environment. Of course, once you start fighting corruption, as we say, corruption also fights you back. So what it means is that once you start dealing with corruption in certain ways, prevent it or fight it, those corrupt officials or those corrupt perpetrators of corrupt practices, they will also find new ways. They will become more complex. They will become more sophisticated in their crime. So that's why, for instance, when you have no control, people would just steal in a very simple way. When you have more controls in place, then they will find some more elaborate ways of hiding their actions. So they will create shell companies, and they will have several layers, and they will try to hide their corrupt practices through, several layers of complicated schemes. Basically, they become more sophisticated. So in that kind of environment, I think all countries are in a way experimenting together, are finding solutions to these new issues, and it becomes very useful for these countries to share their practices, because they may have found different solutions that, it may be different from a neighboring country. They may have had something work with them that other countries in the region have not tested yet. So it becomes very useful for anti-corruption practitioners to be exposed to ideas and experiences of each other, and to hear about how they deal in other countries with the same issues, what works, what doesn't work, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. You can learn from some of those experiences and apply it. As I said, globally, anti-corruption still is a young movement. If you look at it at the international level and compare it with other movements, it's still young. So there is a lot to be learned. There is a lot to be tested. And I think this kind of forum, this CPAC, is a very good place for that, for countries which are closer also to each other, and they're also in a situation that they are very strong. They have, through ASEAN integration, they have increasingly strong link to each other. It's a great opportunity for them to engage in an exchange of good practices, of learning from each other on how they deal with this challenge. Important as we are moving towards ASEAN Economic Community in 2015. We in a way, there are lots of great opportunities for this rich region with huge potentials, but there's also a downside to that. There's also risks, because we are opening the borders. We are hoping to increase the economic interdependence and economic exchanges between these countries. On the other hand, we have to be ready also for the dark side of globalization, when we open these borders, when we open these kind of barriers across these countries, there may be also more opportunities, as we heard this morning from the minister, for
ASEAN meeting, ASEAN minister meeting.
Yes, no, but what I'm saying is that when we open these borders, there's also a chance for dark forces to use this opportunity to try to basically benefit from this new opening. So it's very important for countries to be ready and to move in a direction of creating a regional agenda for fighting corruption, for fighting crime, for fighting transnational organized crime, and so on. And that idea of ASEAN ministerial meeting, I think in this area, I think is a very good one. We hope that could be also complemented by other initiatives from private sector, from the region joining hands at ASEAN level, and civil society from ASEAN. So all of these different, I think, actors can bring their discussions up to the ASEAN level also, and create a network of these forces working together against corruption or crime and so on.